everybody. Welcome back. I'll tell you, if we were doing this in person, this would be part of the day when I start to say, I'm getting warmed up. I'm really feeling the energy. We're getting there, and it's really coming together. We love doing these events, and we can't wait to do them in person. Coming up next, we have a really important session. I'm really thrilled to have the guests in front of us that we're going to be sharing with you. We're going to be talking about conscientious brand safety and suitability in practice. We're going to be hearing from some practitioners on what they're actually doing right now. And so I'm thrilled to invite up to the stage Terry Shriver, Yael Cohen, and Karen Gross from Bank of America, Publicis, and DoubleVerify to join us today. So come on up.
I feel like we should be walking onto the stage.
I know. I feel like you should be as well. I don't see you yet, so I'll say a couple more words once I see you guys here. There you are. Okay, awesome. Welcome. How's everybody doing today? And if you can take and actually, before I get started, of course, thank you to DoubleVerify. They are our longest standing partner of the Brand Safety Summit series, and we're always thrilled for the content we work with them. And so thank you, DV. Really appreciate your support. Everybody in the audience does as well. So Karen, starting with you, how are you doing today? And if you want to give a quick intro and tell us all something, a hobby of yours that maybe people in the crowd don't know.
Sure. Glad to be here today. My name is Karen Gross. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at DoubleVerify. I've been at DV for 10 years as of March. And I run the client services team. So all the account managers, implementation, sales engineering, and everybody who supports our customers out in the market. And one thing that I'll tell you about myself is I'm very big into scuba diving, especially diving with sharks. And I take underwater photography. So that's my passion when I'm not verifying online media.
Karen,
Nice.
I learned something about you today.
Yeah, Terry. So Terry, ladies first, take it away. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank
please.
you. And good morning, everyone. I'm Terry Shriver. I lead the brand safety and suitability practice at Bank of America. And been there for 15 years. I've been doing brand safety and suitability for probably a little over 5 years now. So let's see, one thing you don't know, I am a mom of 2 teens. And so rather than telling you about my hobby, or rather than saying, so my hobby is cooking, but that's gone by the wayside because I'm trying desperately to teach my teens how to be kind, but tough and dependable. And so that's taking all of my energy that I have outside of work.
Well, good luck to you. I have 3 of my own, and yeah, kind and tough at the same time. That's a bold ambition, but good for you.
Especially in today's social media atmosphere, it's very difficult.
Indeed. Well, hats off. Yael, please take a minute and introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yael Cohen, EVP of Global Digital Standards at Publicis Media. I haven't been there as long as Terry for 15 years. I'm 11, one over Karen. But it's fascinating to see all of us over a decade at our companies, respectively. I have 2 kids at 2 and under 2, so I'm in a different boat than Terry. And I would say my passion, my hobby is trying to wrangle them, get them to bed, and then have a really good, nice glass of wine.
It helps, right?
It helps.
It helps for sure.
After focusing on how to keep advertisers and consumers safe from online harm.
Indeed. So yeah, wow, everybody about a decade. So we're about to celebrate our 10th anniversary at 614 as well. So this summer. So it's pretty cool. We've all been doing our things for a while, and I said this yesterday, but I'll say it again. My hobby is I'm a gardener, but my interesting fact for this year is I planted my squash and zucchini in front of my house, just to see, because they get so giant. I figured, let me put it in front of the house. Worst case, the deer eat them. but we'll see what happens. So anyway, fun fact. Getting to the topic at hand. The balance between brand suitability and brand safety. And again, anyone feel free to jump in, because I think let's have a conversation. It's just us. There's nobody watching. The balance between brand safety and brand suitability. How are you balancing those two things in your thinking, as you're supporting the ecosystem publishers and yourselves and the marketplace? And anybody jump in.
Okay.
Terry, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So, I think there's a lot of discussion, right, about balancing scale and safety and suitability. And, but for us, we're focused first and foremost on trusted partners. And we look for partners that uphold similar values and business ethics. And then from there, we just work diligently with those partners to understand their products and where we could apply our controls that allow us to reach audiences in quality environments while keeping our brand safe. And so, that's at the core of it. And then scale builds from there once you know where your trusted partners are and where you can invest your dollars.
Yeah, and I would say, in working with Bank, there's a lot of controls that DV has worked on over the past 2 years that allow the advertisers to really open up their reach, by being able to put home pages or section pages on exception lists so that they're not swept into, classification categories that, on a page level that might have a story that they don't want to be around. Because we have found that when consumers see ads on home pages or section pages, they're not really associating that ad with a specific story, but rather with the publication itself. And it's important to be able to protect advertisers in environments that perhaps aren't trusted news publishers and could have misinformation about certain topics as things, especially last year in the environment, but enable them to still support well-known and trusted publishers. So, the Bank is definitely at the forefront of that. And Publicis, I know Yale and I spoke at the beginning of the pandemic about making sure that publishers weren't unfairly swept up into broad blocking.
Yeah, one of the things that we've introduced into our clients in the marketplace is this concept around brand integrity. And it helps us to understand and fundamentally look at, in a more strategic lens, the difference between safety and suitability. And it also helps us to work with partners like DV and for our clients and understand what is the unique risk for each client under the new Garm structure, and how do we ensure that we're opting into the right framework? How do we look at the right keywords that address nuances for clients? How do we look at how to, as Karen said, tackle misinformation and remove advertiser support? How do we look at all of the different controls and settings? Because I think we're entering into a more sophisticated marketplace, but yet it gets even more complex. And so I think it takes a lot of diligence and a lot of collaboration to do that. And our approach is certainly tried to simplify some of that complexity. And as Terry said, work with trusted partners.
Yes.
Yeah, no, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'm so glad that Yale brought up the whole notion of brand integrity, because, we lean hard into that space. And when you think about it and kind of how the practice of brand safety has evolved over the last 5 years or so, I mean, we started out protecting against fraud and ensuring viewability and all of that. And once we felt like we had decent controls around that, you can never take your eye off the prize, right? But once we felt like you have decent controls around those, then, it's what's suitable for the brand. And we've been doing a ton of work as an industry around that in recent, basically over the last 12 months or so. And then when you think about brand responsibility, it's like, okay, reflecting on your values as a company and making sure that those are reflected in your ad choices. And it's also about cleaning up the ecosystem overall. So it's a healthy ecosystem for us all to transact and for users to explore. So they're not having to deal with determining on their own whether something's misinformation or not.
Yeah, we talk about standards a lot. These key terms and adding brand responsibility. How do you think, one of the things I wanted to bring into the conversation over the course of the entire event was this idea of building above a standard or building at a standard. Like, how do you think about it, in your own business? Like, do you think about the standard, okay, this is where we need to build to, we need to be above it? I think it's an interesting conversation having to do with where companies are in relative to the standards. How do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, sorry. So I was going to say, it's definitely important to have these standards and have the framework so that everybody's speaking the same language, everybody's on the same page, and we're kind of coming, at it from a common understanding. But, I can say at DV, for example, some of the categories in the brand safety floor, we felt it was important to go a little deeper, right? So they have a category: alcohol, drugs, tobacco, vaping, right? And for some of our clients, let's say a liquor, company, they'd be okay around alcohol, but they wouldn't be okay around drug abuse. So we've broken out those categories into more granular categories so that we're not making the advertiser choose whether to, be more restrictive and cut off content that they would normally be okay being around. So we have built a little bit above the standard that gives our advertisers much more flexibility and allows them to, not stifle where they would be okay running.
Yeah.
And I think that's like critical because you talk about above and below the standard. And I think for a long time, the industry hasn't had a lot of common standards for us to transact on, or if they have, maybe not everybody's seen that as appropriate for their brand. And so working with a partner like DoubleVerify that's got a much more granular view of things has helped us significantly being above the standard. But at the same time, now it's great to see like the Garm suitability framework come into play, because that level sets it for everyone. And we're no longer kind of in our own silo trying to push things forward with publishers and platforms, but yet we can, work as an industry on consistent metrics and standards that work for all of us.
I don't think I've ever seen a client say, I want less controls.
Yeah.
It's always how do we determine how to create the right settings that are suitable for their business. One of the fascinating things about our industry is it continues to evolve. So we set that the industry frameworks and definitions for the 11 harmful categories. Now we're embarking on this expanded guidance within some of those categories to further define that, to help re-inform controls and settings, and then also through Tech Lab to understand all of the content categories that are suitable for clients, so that clients understand which content category resonates with their brand. And it's fascinating to see all of the work happen behind the scenes as the industry evolves. But certainly, I've never heard clients say, "Nah, we just want one or two things, flip it on, flip it off." So we're always trying to improve and exceed industry standards and reinvent everything year over year.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
it's so funny to hear you say that, because we took the suitability framework and of course like embraced it with open arms and, you know, determined our risk tolerance for the categories that were identified. But then we quickly used that framework to start adding on to it in other categories and like defining them ourselves in so anyway,
Yeah.
always looking for more controls. Yes.
Yeah.
No, so I want to move ahead because, you know, it's, yeah, so we have a standard, we're building above it in a lot of cases. You know, the eyes are on us. Let's just call it what it is. More and more businesses in our space are publicly traded now. So not only are our customers looking at us, our partners looking at us, but the public's looking at us. And so in the thinking of a 24-hour ever evolving news cycle, how do you keep up? How are we keeping up? You know, because I want to get into practice. Like, so, okay, we've got the philosophy. How are we doing this in practice? And I know we're going to get into some specific examples of things you guys are doing right now. But let's just talk about the news cycle first. Like, how do you maintain staying above the standard or at the standard in a 24-hour news cycle?
So, I mean, for us, it all gets back to our initial structure that we built in helping us make consistent principle-based decisions. And that helps us, you know, avoid reputational risk. It helps us having to react to the negative news cycle. But that's, you know, it's not fail proof, right? And so we are constantly pressure checking our controls to make sure that, you know, that what we've got in place still stands. And if we need to make tweaks here and there, we do. But it's not like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, we've got to address this issue. So that's the good thing. And that's, you know, thanks to the work that DV and that Publicis has helped us with, having that very strong foundation has served us well.
Yeah.
One of the fascinating things has been that there's so many cultural moments that are happening that influence our media. And part of that was through this concept of brand integrity, so that we can create a framework to make decisions that are for the longevity of a client's business, not just for media, but for every type of decision where cultural moments are impacting them as an industry. And I think one of the things that partners like DV have helped to do within that, and building towards something that when you start to choose a trusted partner, you trust that they're going to build the right frameworks, is when there is inflammatory news, that there are controls and settings that you can use as a more sophisticated device to help an advertiser. And so I think that sort of evolved the industry to become even more responsible to how you address things that are in the news. And you're right, Rob, the news is just like going chaos everywhere. And how do we distill the chaos to find the right inventory for it's right for our client? You're also seeing, like, it's fascinating that the Queen of England is starting to comment on online harm as well. I mean, she had a whole speech on online harm, the introduction of how do we fight child obesity, how do we fight misinformation. This has become so pervasive that it's not just in like a advertising world, it's coming into the cultural world, it's coming into regulators. And so we're constantly mindful and conscientious of all of those things, and how we work with partners to build the right tools and controls.
Yeah, and from a DV perspective, you know, it's very important to us to constantly, you know, build on our tools and refine them. And, you know, we've set up a classification system based on, you know, a semantic engine that as news is being released into the ecosystem, we're constantly evaluating it and classifying it, and with a policy-based framework, and giving advertisers, as I mentioned before, an increasing amount of tools to really let them refine their brand suitability profiles and really match what they want to be around and what they don't want to be around. And, you know, the granularity of the tools available to the advertisers really helps enable them to execute on their particular strategy. It's kind of like in a car, you know, you don't just want brakes, you don't just want a seatbelt, you don't just want an airbag, you want all three, right? Because you need all these tools, and with inclusion lists, exclusion lists, the semantic categories, keyword avoidance, you know, all together really allows advertisers to create a very customized brand suitability profile.
And you know,
Will we ever
I'll say
want a
there,
self-driving car?
but in seriousness, I mean, the one thing that I'll say there is, because of these controls and because of the granularity that we're able to have view through, and it allows us to participate in news environments, because we think that that's so important. And we've said publicly many times, like, news is a category, it's extremely important, but we can navigate that space with the controls that DV has without like excluding the category or having this lengthy keyword list or something like that. So it's very helpful. And that gets back to your earlier question about the balancing scale and safety and suitability, right? So it just kind of all works together.
Yeah, you know, the news cycle, it's crazy. I mean, keeping up must be, you know, it's like nearly in real time. Specifically when it comes to incentivizing, you brought up a good point, Yale, as far as, you know, what the Queen is doing. When it comes up to disincentivizing misinformation and hate speech, what responsibility do you think we have as an industry specifically to do this? I mean, it's certainly a big task, and I think people would say change isn't happening fast enough, right? What is the responsibility of all of us in this topic?
I mean, I'll step in there. I think there's a vacuum that sort of has been put there because some of our news cycle has been, you know, that chaotic news cycle. So the misinformation that's out there is ad funded in some instances, and we definitely have a responsibility to recreate that trust with the consumer, to show that we're taking the steps necessary to remove that ad support. That is a key effort across our industry, is to how to define misinformation and disinformation, how to identify it, how to remove it, and how to understand the right protections and controls. And I think we started down the pathway towards this probably, you know, I mean, earlier than 2019, but I think we started a lot of this work in 2019 leading into 2020 elections. And I definitely don't think that we're ever going to be done with this. This is something that is going to take a lot of vigilance, and I don't know if one single solution is going to help. Is not to help, but is going to solve the problem. And I think we're just going to have to continue to put best efforts into this.
Yeah, before you go on, just if anybody wants to ask any questions from the audience or wants to drop them in my Slack channel, that's the easiest way for me to see them, just kind of putting that out there. But Terry, please jump ahead.
Now, the one thing I was going to say is, I mean, I feel like as an industry, we've made such great strides identifying, you know, using the brand safety floor to identify those areas and eradicate those from the ecosystem where we can, or at least from alignment with advertising. And I guess what I'll say is, you know, as it relates to misinformation and disinformation, like Yale said, it's an ongoing effort. We knew it was happening with the election. We knew it was happening with COVID. You know, but we were reacting to it. It feels like in many cases as an industry and putting policies in place. And I'm just really looking forward to the opportunity to be on our front foot and trying to anticipate what's next, right? So we're not constantly playing catch up.
Yeah, and it's hugely important. We ran a research study, and the majority of consumers do feel that it's the advertiser's responsibility to not be around misinformation. And a lot of them said that they would stop using a brand or not try a brand if they saw their ad next to misinformation. And, you know, as I'm sure Terry can attest to, it takes years to build brand loyalty with customers. And if, you know, you lose that because your ad shows up next to an inflammatory news article, you know, that's a huge loss and hard to recoup. So it's crucial for advertisers to lean in and make sure that they are not, sponsoring misinformation, because it's very important for consumers.
Yeah, trust could be lost in a second. I think
Yeah.
that's the point, right? And
yeah,
and in real time today, yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Garm, because I know that that's something that's near and dear to all of your hearts. There was an update yesterday. Tell us the 4A supported Garm. What steps have you taken specifically to align the practices that you guys are doing today with the Garm framework?
Yale, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Part of it is education and helping to understand what are the right tools, what is the right approach. The second one is just how do we understand how to action some of the industry frameworks and better ingrain that. And I guess the third thing is how do we specifically work with our partners to ensure that within social platforms that is the right mechanism and framework to approach them, and to make sure that that's unified across so that we have the right cross-platform measurement approach.
Yeah, and I'll just say, DV gives our advertisers full coverage across the Garm framework. We're collaborating with the APB on development of the standards, and we're committed to making product enhancements as things evolve, and being part of that initiative. We fully support it. I think, as we said at the beginning of the conversation, DV feels that it's very important that there is kind of a collective understanding of the standards and a framework that works for everybody.
We can't have a session without talking about the deprecation of the cookie and IDFA. And so I know we're short on time here, but let's talk about that a little bit. What impact do you all believe that the deprecation of the cookie and changes to IDFA are going to have as it relates to brand safety and suitability and the framework you guys are both a part of creating and working on?
Yeah, so we don't rely on cookies for brand safety classification. So it's important for people to understand that and not fear that verification could be going away if there is cookie deprecation. I think browsers are constantly making updates to ensure privacy. And I think it's important that as an industry, we all make sure that these changes don't block the view into the content that's surrounding the ad that will harm the ability to do brand safety and suitability. But the cookie and the IDFA doesn't necessarily inhibit our or other verification providers' ability to see the content and protect the advertisers.
That's really important. Yale, Terry, do you think there's anything else that people need to know specifically as it relates to this conversation for as it relates to cookies and how they're handled and for verification purposes? Anything specific that you think they need to know?
I'll take that one. One of the things that we're looking at, because you're right, there's a lot of changes in the identity space, and there's a lot of education that needs to happen to help understand of the deprecation of cookies, the impact of IDFA and those changes. But as Karen said, there is clarity with verification partners. There's certainly the right tools in place to understand contextual analysis, and to start to think about becoming more sophisticated around cohorts of contextual audiences. And I think that's a thing that helps marketers in this space to understand how to at least move forward with that portion. There's certainly going to be a lot of test and learn in the identity space to understand impact on an individual advertiser by advertiser basis, but there's certainly clarity that we can advise clients on to help navigate this. And I think that we're always going to be faced with challenges. We've had a ton of measurement challenges, that there continue around cross screen and measurement for multi-touch attribution. This is just a new one for us in the identity space and privacy and regulatory. But I feel like that the advertising industry is very resilient and will continue to find solutions that will also seek to understand a consumer's perspective, because I think at the ultimate offset is that we want to make sure that we are building trust with consumers, and that we continue to do that in a way that does not support any misinformation or anything like that. So I have to say that I'm optimistic in this space that we'll find the right solutions, and we'll continue to work on solutions that aren't cookie based as well in our space.
So I'm getting the time sign, but that's a good place to wrap. But let me just ask this last question. We're about to hit June 30th, so we're halfway through the year. I can't believe it. We're halfway through 21. Crazy. What do we need to do in the next 6 months to wrap up what are the key issues we need to think about kind of as we get to the close of the year to promote overall inventory quality and just doing business the right way? Kind of what do we need to think about over the next 6 months?
So I can jump in. I think with the rise in CTV and the increased usage on social, I think it's important that and audio, I think it's important that we as an industry make sure that these burgeoning, social is not burgeoning, but these kind of walled garden environments are enabling verification partners to have the information to continue to protect advertisers in the ecosystem. I think, it's important that the same level of controls are available in all the places that the advertisers want to advertise on. So I would say making sure that as the industry evolves and new technologies, start to become more important, that the innovation continues and the openness.
Thank you, Karen. Terry Yale, closing thoughts. What are you thinking about for the rest of this year?
Basically what Karen said. I mean, as consumers shift to more CTV and audio becomes just this robust channel, and we go in and we're evaluating the opportunity there. Right now, there's not the consistent standards that maybe we have in other places to determine safety and suitability. And so I really believe that that's an area that we need to press on, and we need to get that right, because that's just going to open up more opportunity for advertisers in those spaces.
And I'll be short and sweet. I would say that it's important for us to think about a brand integrity framework that works for advertisers and our partners, that helps to reinform our decisions on safety and suitability. because I think that's going to ultimately set us up for long-term success instead of short-term decisioning that the news cycle's hitting us with, and it gets us out of that short-term mindset.
Awesome. Well, great session. I mean, there's honestly no limit of stuff we can talk about when it comes to standards and working and examples. So really appreciate you spending the time, sharing with our audience. Always insightful. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Yale. Great job. And we'll see you all soon. Coming up next, we have an interview with Rachel Luba. Don't miss it. If you're a Yankee fan, there was no hitter in baseball last night. So come check it out. We'll see you soon.